Welcome back. All right, I'm recording this on Groundhog Day. It's between the first and second period of New Jersey and Buffalo on a Sunday morning, so Buffalo's having themselves quite the game so far. Anyways, we're going to talk about the LA Kings. So finally a Western team. I've talked about four Eastern teams. Now we're going to talk about a Western Conference team. The LA Kings over the last quarter century, they have had their share of success. Therefore, their letter grade is an A because multiple Stanley Cups means it kind of has to be. Even though if you look over the last, say, about 10 years, about since that second Stanley Cup, there have been some bumps along the road, right? So, in the regular season, their ranking is 19th in the power rankings I did for 2001 through 2023 2024. The playoffs, 7th, showing that when they make the playoffs, they're dangerous. And it's something that I've talked about. And remember, you only get points for the playoff power rankings if you win in the playoffs. Making the playoffs gets you no points. That's what the regular season rankings are for. So they did win the Stanley Cup in 2012 and 2014, so that's their last Stanley Cup win. And of course, the 2012 Stanley Cup win, no one saw that coming. When they upset the Vancouver Canucks in the first round, everybody just dunked on Vancouver. Look at this; they can't even beat LA. They're so broken from last year's Stanley Cup win over Boston. They can't even get out of the first round. And then LA won the Stanley Cup that year. Now, they did make it to the conference final in 2015, and that was during that about 4 year era there where LA and Chicago were seen as being the class of the West. And they had some really good clashes as well, Chicago and the LA Kings. There were 6 seasons in a row early in the century where the Kings missed the playoffs. They also had a recent run of 3 in a row where they missed the playoffs as well. So, looking at the scoring with this team over the last 24 years, and again, it does not include this season. But Kopitar, surprise, surprise, he's their leading scorer from 01, well, 2000, 2001 until now. And I just realized the irony, too, that I'm wearing a Steve Duchesne jersey. I don't think he played with them in the 21st century. I think he was retired before that. Anyways, we'll just power through it. Kopitar, pretend you don't see it. 1,373 games with Kings. 419 goals, 792 assists, 1,211 points. He's going to the Hall of Fame. Brown, 1,296 games, 325 goals, 387 assists, 712 points. Drew Doughty's on the board. He's a future Hall of Famer as well. 1,177 games, 153 goals, 513 assists, 669 points. Jeff Carter makes it into the top 580 games played, 194 goals, 189 assists, 383 points. Frolov, 536 games played, 168 goals, 213 assists, 381 points. Adrian Kempe is in the top 10, 549 games, 159 goals, 169 assists, 328 points. Toffoli makes it into the top 10 as well, 515 games, 139 goals, 151 assists, 290 points. Lubomir Visnovsky, 499 games, 70 goals, 209 assists, 279 points. Ziggy Palfy's on the board. I like Ziggy Palfy. 247 games, 123 goals, I should say, 151 assists, 274 points. And Justin Williams in the top 10, 427 games, 103 goals, 163 assists, 266 points for Mr. Game 7. Then we get into the goaltenders, and it's basically Jonathan Quick and everybody else. Quick, a record of 370, 275, and 82, 911 save percentage. Potvin, 61, 52, and 16 with a 905 save percentage. Cal Peterson, 44, 42, and 10 with a 905 save percentage as well. And Guerin, 44, 36, and 9 record, 898 save percentage. So with what Kemper's doing this season, if he's there for a couple years, he's going to pass some of these guys if I do this again a couple years from now. I'm not sure why I would, but I could. You never know. So yeah, the goaltending has basically been Jonathan Quick's net, and rightfully so. He did help them win those cups in 2012 and 2014, and saying help is an understatement with the 2012 Stanley Cup. Really is. Then you get into the coaching side of things. They've had their share of coaches. Andy Murray, John Torchetti, and again, this is just going back to 2000, 2001. Mark Crawford. One of the weird things when Mark Crawford went there was that he took Dan Cloutier with him. I just thought that was so odd. Like, I understand that he knew Cloutier, but he should also have realized that Cloutier had struggles staying healthy and couldn't really be relied on at that point in his career to play that full season. Terry Murray also had a time behind the bench. John Stevens. Daryl Sutter, famously and then infamously, kind of a little bit of both there, as the coach of the team. Willie Desjardins had a short run as their head coach, and then they went to Todd McClellan. It's funny with Willie Desjardins, too, because he followed John Tortorella in Vancouver. It's sort of like, okay, we had the guy that the players weren't all that happy with, and he was kind of, snarly, so we'll get the nice guy. Willie Desjardins, a nice guy as coach. But yeah, then they went to Todd McClellan. He was there for a while, and now, of course, it's Jim Hiller. This is an NHL team that the expectations on them right now seem to be a little bit higher than they've been, let's say, when they were going through that rebuild process, which didn't last that long. The rebuild didn't last that long for LA. I think part of it being they had Kopitar and Doughty, and I mean, you want to build things right back up. I think Pittsburgh wants to follow that kind of model as well. Then you get to general managers. It's a short list. Dave Taylor, Dean Lombardi, who helped to get them those 2 Stanley Cups, and Rob Blake, who there's some debate about Rob Blake's place in this team's history and his job as a general manager. The thing is, if this team stays in a playoff spot, he's staying as the general manager. The LA Kings, as long as there's some success in the regular season, I don't think we'll see a change in terms of who's calling the shots. Then you get to captains. Rob Blake was the captain earliest on, so he goes from being captain to being general manager, same as we had earlier in this series with Chris Drury and the New York Rangers. Matthias Nordstrom, defensive defenseman, but a pretty good captain as well. I've had people ask, like, well, could you do a video on what makes a good captain? It's, what does or doesn't make a good captain is such just this, what I might qualify as a good captain is basically like good production on the ice and good leadership on the ice. And if it's a third or fourth liner, probably throwing some hits and standing up for his teammates, that kind of thing. And yeah, I think Nordstrom was a good captain. I mean, there's also the part where they do rally guys in the locker room, but we don't hear very much about that. We do see it on NHL TV shows. Although I have to be honest, when I see those big rally moments, I'm thinking, but is this staged on any level? Like they know there's a camera in the room. I'm not saying that they don't believe in each other and they don't cheer and all this, but it does kind of feel like at times they might be putting on a little bit of a show for the camera, which for hockey players, personality is important. And then, of course, for a long time there, they had Captain Dustin Brown. Eventually, Dustin Brown's time as captain came to an odd end, but he stayed with the team. There were all these discussions about Brown and when he was going to get traded and where he might get traded to, but it never happened. So he retired as an LA King. And now, of course, their captain being Anze Kopitar. Kopitar will be the captain of the LA Kings until he's retired. And then, I don't know who you hand it to. I guess maybe Kempe, right? I mean, if Doughty's still there, but Doughty probably goes when Kopitar does. And, yeah, so we'll see what happens with their captaincy after Kopitar's career's done. He's 37 years of age. Realistic to think that, within the next few years, they're going to have to consider getting a different captain because time's undefeated. And it's sad. It is. It's weird. It's one of those things looking at this series. It's just my brain kind of wrapping around just how many years are encompassed here. And I remember years further back than that. So, makes me feel old. But that's kind of what the history videos do at this point. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. I really enjoy putting these videos together. I hope they do well. I've got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping they do well on the channel. It doesn't look like I'm going to beat the weather, though. The inclement weather is going to be here tonight / tomorrow morning. So to finish out this series, I'm probably going to be in a different room. But all right, there you go. All set up, all done with the Kings. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.